In this episode, we talk about why Karnataka has banned food coloring in gobhi manchurian and cotton candy. We also talk about the controversy surrounding Rahul Gandhi's remarks on Shakti. But first, we talk about why the Lok Sabha polls this time will extend all the way into the peak summer month of June. Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargava, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. Over the weekend, the Election Commission announced the dates for the highly anticipated Lok Sabha polls. According to the Commission, the polls will be held between the 19th of April and will extend all the way to the 1st of June, when temperatures will likely be soaring. Now, this 44-day election period, which will witness 7 phases, is the second longest after the first parliamentary election that took place in 1951 to 1952. In this segment, we are joined by Indian Express's Chief of National Bureau, Ritika Chopra, to talk about the reasons behind this delay and what the Election Commission considers while deciding the poll dates.
So, of course, the very obvious basic factor is when is the term of a house coming to an end? And ideally 6 months within that time frame, you should hold an election and finish that before the term of the house ends. So that, of course, is the first consideration, which is the biggest factor in deciding the timing of an election, and an obvious one.
But besides this, of course, the main decision is when should the elections be held between that 6 months window.
And there are a lot of things that go into deciding the exact election schedule. In fact, from what we know, the Commission actually has about 2 to 3 election schedules ready. And they try out all kinds of permutation combination to see what works best. The couple of things that this depends on, of course, is the availability of forces. That's the most crucial input for an election. You need adequate number of forces. So, which is why the Commission consults the Home Ministry and the Railways on letting them know on how many forces they would need and then figuring out by when would the centre be able to provide those numbers. That, of course, and then election preparedness. But given that how well-oiled machine it is, that's not so much of an issue.
The other thing she says the Election Commission has to consider pertains to one of its key mandates, besides conducting free and fair elections, which is to ensure a decent voter turnout.
In order to ensure that, of course, apart from encouraging people to come out and vote, it also has to ensure that circumstantially, the circumstances are favorable enough for people to come out and vote. And by that, I mean it has to actually look at the calendar, look at the examination schedule. Are there any school exams? Is it, for instance, the board exam season? Or are there festivals lined up, And they understand that, especially religious festivals, if there's something of religious significance, voting on that day may not be a priority. So they would ensure that none of the voting dates fall on the day of a festival. So these are some of the factors that go into framing the schedule of an election. And of course, this is done with utmost secrecy because, of course, one reason behind that is that there is this separation between the executive and the commission, and the commission doesn't really want to keep the government in the loop on everything that it's doing. It's an independent body, and it tries to kind of maintain that even while when it's planning the election schedule.
Right, because if it does work in close proximity to the executive, it would not be fair to other political parties. But now, Ritika, this time the elections are extending all the way to the month of June. It'll be peak summer, it'll be extremely hot, and we were talking about making it convenient for people to come out and vote. And so peak summer obviously is not ideal for that. So talk about why there has been this delay.
Actually, I missed this out earlier. Of course, weather conditions are also a very important factor that goes into deciding an election schedule. For instance, why does the Commission not hold elections during peak winters in J&K? Because, of course, due to heavy snowfall, a lot of areas are out of bound. So it's not just about whether voters will come out and be able to vote, but also whether the election of polling personnel will be able to travel to those far out places to set up polling booths. But yeah, coming back to your question on why is it that the poll schedule is sort of spilling over into the month of June, it's the result of a combination of factors. We did speak with officers in the Commission. One, of course, the very obvious reason was that in the last Lok Sabha election, the last date for voting was the 19th of May, and the results were announced on the 23rd of May. And this time around, the last date of election is the 1st of June, and the results for the Lok Sabha elections will be announced on the 4th. So there is good about 10-12 days ka gap in between, as you can see. And we try to figure out why, because even in those 10 days, of course, it will get really hot, and whether that would actually affect the turnout of voters. But the obvious reason, the first reason for the delay, of course, was the delay in announcement. In 2019, elections were announced on the 10th of March, and this time around was announced on the 16th of March. So that's a delay of 6 days. And that, we were told, was mainly because of a surprise development, which was the resignation of Election Commissioner Arun Goel. That happened very recently, just about a week before the elections were expected to be announced.
And this, we've talked about in the past, had come as a surprise to the Election Commission as well.
Yes, exactly. So everyone was taken aback. So when Arun Goel resigned, at that point, the Election Commission, which is actually a 3-member body, was a 2-member body, Arun Goel being one, and Rajiv Kumar, the Chief Election Commissioner, being the 2nd member. And the 3rd member had just retired on the 14th of February. So that was one vacancy that had to be filled, and then Arun Goel resigned abruptly, so which meant there were 2 vacancies out of 3 positions, and it was just Rajiv Kumar. And at that point, the commission took a call to wait for the government to fill up those 2 vacancies, because even though there is nothing legally wrong with 1-member election commission conducting elections, but given the magnitude of the exercise, given the importance of the Lok Sabha elections once in 5 years, and the commission felt that it was best that those 2 vacancies were filled. And those 2 vacancies were filled within a week of the resignation. So the appointments happened on, if I'm not wrong, on the 14th. The 2 new election commissioners, that's Sukhbir Singh Sandhu and Gyanesh Kumar, joined on the 15th, and the elections were announced on the 16th. So that's why the delay in announcement.
Right, so they were trying to ensure that before they announce the election dates, they at least have this 3-member panel in place.
Right. And of course, the other reason was, aside from the fact that it had been delayed by almost a week, there are a lot of festivals during this season. There is, of course, Holi. I was speaking to an officer. He said that, for instance, Holi ke dauran, he's like, Bihar mein 3 din kuch kaam hi nahi hota hai. And of course, the same festival may be celebrated differently or could be more important than other festivals, across different states. So taking all of that into consideration. In fact, I was told that, the commission tried several permutation combinations to see if the process could have been wrapped up by the end of May, but it wasn't possible. And given that they didn't want this to affect the turnout, which is why, they had to spread it out in a way that none of the festivals would actually affect the polling date. So, for instance, the day of, withdrawal of nomination, all of that. So these were the 2 major factors why, actually this, in fact, if I just look at the voting period, that's the 7 phases from 19th of April to 1st of June, that's actually 44 days. And this is, in fact, the longest election period. I'm not talking about the MCC period, but just the voting period that we've had since the first general election. But they said that we've tried to figure it out and wasn't possible. And this is what we, eventually built a consensus on.
And Ritika, in a situation like these, are there measures that the Election Commission takes so that the voter turnout doesn't get affected, so that people still show up?
So just to give you one example, like for instance, it's not as if elections have not happened in the summer months. And even if, let's say, May is not, you can't say May is super cool. The weather, of course, it's hot. What happens is that, the turnout does, for instance, dwindle during the day. And what happens is, for instance, if people start lining up in the evening, and there have been instances if the turnout has increased, say 6 o'clock is the cutoff time, that's when the voting should ideally end. But if people have started lining up in the evenings, that's when they start stepping out after sundown. And if the commission can see that that's when the turnout is picking up, there have been instances where the commission has allowed people to join the queue up to 6 o'clock, irrespective of how long the queue is. But as long as you have joined the queue till 6, you will be allowed to vote. So which meant that the voting would go on beyond the mandated voting hours. But given, like I said, the commission also wants to ensure that not only do I have to ensure a level playing field and conduct a free and fair election, but I have to also ensure that the voters come out and vote. So there have been instances when people have come out in the evening because of, say, inhospitable weather that day, and commission has made an exception and allowed people to join the queue.
And next we talk about artificial food coloring. Recently, the Karnataka government banned the use of harmful coloring agents in items such as gobi manchurian and cotton candy, with Health Minister Dinesh Gundu Rao announcing that a violation of this ban would attract imprisonment of up to 7 years and a fine of up to 10 lakh rupees. Rao said that the consumption of snacks containing these artificial colors may pose long-term health risks, including cancer, and therefore the health department had taken this necessary action. The state government says that out of the 171 samples of gobi manchurian tested, 107 contained artificial coloring, while the same was found in 15 out of the 25 cotton candies tested. In this segment, Indian Express's Anonna Dutt joins us to talk about this ban and how such coloring agents can impact our health. Anonna, firstly, tell us, in which dishes and food items do we typically see artificial coloring being used?
So food coloring is actually, as per the law, allowed only in certain food items. Mostly it is packaged goods like, say, cookies, biscuits. It's also allowed in cakes, fruit syrups, crushes. It's allowed in, say, jelly crystals and custard powder, ice creams, and some beverages can use these colors. It is not, however, allowed in cooked or prepared food that you would get in restaurants.
Right, but despite that, it is still used in food items that are served in restaurants, right?
Yes, of course. I mean, you must have yourself seen the red color on tandoori chicken or butter chicken, which is unnaturally red, and that is because red coloring is used in these dishes and it's very commonly used everywhere. However, the colors that are used in these food products, or say even gobi manchurian as it has been found in Karnataka, they usually use edible red color, which is still fine because these are colors that wouldn't cause you so much harm as, say, rhodamine B, which was flagged by the Karnataka government, which is a red color dye, but it's not an edible one. It is usually used in, say, plastics and in textile industry, things like that. It's a great coloring agent, but it is not supposed to be used in food products, as oral consumption can cause acute impacts. But I mean, again, it was found in the gobi manchurian samples and the cotton candy samples that were picked up in Karnataka.
And do we know how commonly rhodamine B is being used at the moment?
So once this order from the Karnataka government came, I spoke to a few food safety inspectors in the country. And from what I hear is that in mostly the big cities like, say, Delhi, Mumbai, etc., the coloring, like I was mentioning in the chicken, those are actually food grade coloring that they use. But rhodamine B is usually seen in, say, smaller cities with smaller vendors, like, you know, those ice creams that are made and sold in matkas, and cotton candy, of course, is an example. So these smaller vendors tend to use rhodamine B as coloring agent. But what I was told is it's not because they're just not aware that this is not food grade coloring and shouldn't be used. So that's where these samples are mostly found.
And Anonna, what do experts say about the kind of harm that rhodamine B can cause in humans?
So, of course, when the story first broke, there was a lot of talk about the agent being carcinogen. And the IARC, International Agency for Research on Cancer, it's a WHO body which sort of creates a compendium of all the cancer-causing products or agents. They say that rhodamine B cannot be classified as a carcinogen in humans, but there are some studies in rats that have shown that it can lead to cancer. So there is some harm. And then other than that, of course, it's known to cause acute toxicity when consumed orally. And then if there is an exposure, say, in an industrial area, it can cause damage to the eye, irritation on the skin, irritation in the respiratory tract, these sort of symptoms.
Yeah, and right now we are talking about rhodamine B, but there are other chemicals as well that are a matter of concern. But tell us, what does the current regulatory framework say about what chemicals can be used in food items for coloring?
So, you know, when it comes to food coloring, there is a very restricted list of colors which is allowed by the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India. And they can mainly be of two types. One is natural food coloring. So these are colors that are derived from natural products such as, say, carotene or carotenoids from things like carrots, which are used to give yellow and orange color, chlorophyll to give green color, caramel for their brownish color, saffron, haldi. All of these are natural coloring agents. And, colors are also derived and made into these food coloring agents, which can be used. There are some chemical colors also which are allowed in food called, say, sunset yellow, indigo. All these colors are used, but these are like a list of, say, 7 to 10 colors which are permitted as per the law. Anything other than that is not allowed.
And Anonna, what can people do to avoid consuming such chemicals used in food items? Do we just not have cotton candy and gobi manchurian for now?
So yes, the best way to avoid food coloring, which can be harmful, is to stay away from brightly colored foods, because there you know that it has used some food coloring. So like if you're having chicken, like go for the not so red ones. If you're having cakes and biscuits, just go for a good brand or a good shop where even if the color is used, it will be food grade coloring. So that's the best way to stay away from these colors.
And in the end, we talk about a controversy over Rahul Gandhi's remarks against the BJP. On Sunday, Congress leader Rahul Gandhi's Bharat Jodo Nyaya Yatra that started 2 months back in Manipur finally culminated in Mumbai with a rally that was attended by various leaders of the opposition India bloc. During this rally, Gandhi hit out at the ruling government, saying that the electoral bond scheme was the national version of roadside hafta vasuli, and expressed concerns about the potential manipulation of EVM machines. But one of his comments, which initially went unnoticed but has now created controversy, relates to what he said about Shakti. It was while raising concerns about EVMs that Gandhi said that there is a word Shakti in Hinduism. We are fighting against a Shakti too. The question is, what is that Shakti and what does it mean for us? He went on to say that all institutions in the country, from EVMs to the Enforcement Directorate, were under the might of the Modi government.
हिंदू धर्म में शक्ति शब्द होता है. हम शक्ति से लड़ रहे हैं, एक शक्ति से लड़ रहे हैं. अब सवाल उठता है, वो शक्ति क्या है? जैसे किसी ने यहां कहा, राजा की आत्मा ईवीएम में है. सही है, सही है. राजा की आत्मा ईवीएम में है. हिंदुस्तान की हर संस्था में है, ईडी में है, सीबीआई में है, इनकम टैक्स डिपार्टमेंट में है. एक वरिष्ठ नेता.
Now, a day after this statement, Prime Minister Narendra Modi highlighted these words in multiple rallies, framing the upcoming election fight as a battle between those who worship Shakti and those who want to destroy it.
लड़ाई एक तरफ शक्ति के विनाश के लोग करने वाले लोग हैं, दूसरी तरफ शक्ति की पूजा करने वाले लोग हैं. मुकाबला 4 जून को हो जाएगा. कौन शक्ति का विनाश कर सकता है और कौन शक्ति के आशीर्वाद प्राप्त कर सकता है, इसका मुकाबला 4 जून को हो जाएगा.
हम शक्ति से लड़ रहे हैं.
Modi said that for him, every mother and every daughter is a form of Shakti, and that he worships them. He also said that while the nation dedicated Chandrayaan's success to Shiv Shakti, the opposition parties are talking of destroying Shakti. Writing about this controversy for the paper, Indian Express's deputy editor Liz Matthew notes that the BJP aims to leverage Rahul Gandhi's remarks to reinforce its claims that the India bloc has hatred against Hinduism and Hindu beliefs. She also points out that the Saffron Party views Gandhi's remarks as reminiscent of past controversies triggered by Congress leaders using words like neech and chaiwala. In the piece, she recalls Congress leader Manishankar Iyer using the term chaiwala in reference to Modi in 2014, which had enabled the BJP to contrast his humble beginnings with that of the Congress elite, contributing to the success of their Chai Pe Charcha campaign.
दुनिया के हर विषय की चर्चा चाय की चुस्की लेते लेते होती है। अपने गांव की समस्या की भी चर्चा होगी, किसी परिवार की भी बात होगी और इजराइल में क्या हुआ उसकी भी चर्चा हो जाएगी। मंगल पर क्या होगा क्या नहीं।
Now, under attack for his remark made in Mumbai, Gandhi yesterday clarified that he was not talking about any religious power, but the Shakti of unrighteousness, corruption and falsehood. In a statement posted on X, the Congress leader said, quote, "The Shakti that I mentioned, Modi ji, is the mask of that power, and we are fighting against it. That power has captured India's voice, India's institutions, the CBI, IT, ED, Election Commission, the media, Indian industry, and the entire constitutional structure of India in its clutches." Unquote. You were listening to Three Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargava, and was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.